Hey everybody, thank you for listening. This is Here to Learn, and I'm Matt Edwards, and I'm having such a great time sharing these conversations that I've been so fortunate to have with many of my friends and colleagues in education over 18 years doing this thing, and I'm just so thrilled that you're supporting, and I hope that it's beneficial for you as a parent or a student or a teacher or an administrator or anybody in any walk of life that has to do with teaching and learning. I'm super excited about this episode that I'm sharing with you now. This is a guy that I worked with that I got to see come as a brand new teacher to our school, and then in his just few short years at our school, rise up through the ranks and work his way into administration. And I want to talk to him a little bit, not just about his journey into administration from being a teacher, but also, what are some of his passions and core values about being a teacher leader. Make no mistake, this guy is a star in education in our school system. I think he's destined for really high places, but I think that the thing that you'll find in common between the three different schools that he's worked in is how much his colleagues enjoyed working with him and how much they understood that he was passionate about working together, working toward a common goal, and how obvious his belief in their success was. So it's unique to work with somebody and be around somebody who is that well regarded and to be the boss as well. So I'm excited to share this conversation with Chris Cox, and I hope you really enjoy it. Okay, Chris Cox, thank you very much for sitting in with me today. I appreciate it. I've been thinking a lot about getting you on. I don't know, when I was first making some lists about guests that I'd like to have on this thing, when I was putting it together, your name popped up right away just because you're somebody I've always admired and thought highly of, not just because of your time in the classroom when we worked together, but also when you became an instructional coach with professional learning teams, and then moving your way up into administration in our school system. And I just want to kind of talk to you a little bit about your journey through Wake County Public Schools, but as well as just kind of where you're at now. You're a principal at Stough Elementary, which has a Chinese program. What's that all about?
It does, man. Well, first of all, that doesn't make any sense why I would be this high on your list, Matt Edwards, but I appreciate the kind words. It is true. Is this a good time to just kind of walk through my journey in Wake County Public Schools?
Please, yes.
It's crazy to go from a kindergartner at York Elementary down the road to all of my 13 years in public education as a student with Wake County Public Schools, and then to leave my public university to end up as a 22-year-old Spanish teacher at Millbrook High School, where we met. And so that was quite the journey in and of itself. Why get there, how to get there is such a long story, but the main gist of it was that my college experience at UNC was leading me in a road that I thought I was meant to go into, which was going to be media and journalism. And when a lot of that started to lose its luster and it started to feel like there was not a very impactful outcome for the things that I thought my abilities and skills and passions were aligned with, it became apparent that I could go into the classroom and work with students. And I made my Spanish minor into a major. And I started teaching high school Spanish and helping out with the basketball team and coaching, and that was a great spot where you really felt like you could invest in students. I never thought I'd invest in teenagers. It was kind of ironic that I was only a few years older than some of my students, as I'm sure you experienced as well. I did get asked for my lunch pass by our rent-a-cop type security in my first month on the job at Millbrook. That was embarrassing. And so you grow some facial hair and you talk differently and you keep your badge visible at all times.
All times.
And ultimately, I think that I learned a lot from our administration and other colleagues at the time that I didn't already know, and I learned a lot about myself, and I really found that I enjoyed so much more of the student interaction more than I enjoyed the content, which led me down this path of possibly going into leadership. And I owe a lot of credit to several of our administrators there that encouraged that led me to a program where I could get into an internship, and to do my internship with Mrs. Dana King, who's still the principal at Millbrook, and to learn under her tutelage for 2 years was probably one of the most challenging but yet rewarding times, as hard work really led to that knowledge. And really so much of that time, and I think this is one of the themes that you wanted to talk about, was how do you navigate your role as a teacher transforming into an instructional leader with your same colleagues. And then also, by the way, you have a family outside of school, you have priorities outside of school, you're taking graduate level classes. Those were some of the more challenging years, I would say, as I reflect professionally. To be a new father in and of itself is a mess. And so now I have a middle schooler. You're about to have a middle schooler,
Oh my
Matt.
gosh, I know.
And I'm just at a different stage in my family life where I can give so much more of my time now and balance my time as best I can as a principal. So going back in those late 2000s, 2007, 2008, and then when I got hired as an assistant principal for the first time in 2009, those were some very key years that I had to listen to my superiors, so to speak, those that were training me to go into this field, to leave just the classroom and really thinking larger picture about a whole school. And really, when you get to the principal level, you're not just thinking about the building and those that work in there primarily, but the whole community that connects to and has a web of connections to that building. And so those years were so important, and they were hard to navigate because I was asked to some degree, guide and shape professional learning teams and communities at a time when those were relatively new to our area.
Yeah.
And it wasn't innate in most of our teaching colleagues, I would say, to work together to build curriculum or to use data to build curriculum for an entire department or an entire grade level or an entire subject area. It was much easier, and this was true for me too, as fairly independent or wanting to be independent. I would much rather do my own thing and teach my own kids than to really make it a collaborative effort. And so I learned so much about trying to work with people without telling them what to do, but trying to make sure that they had some level of buy-in for what a PLC is and does. And that really had to shape me a lot, because it would have been easier if the principal just told everybody, well, this is what you're going to do, this is when you're going to meet, and this is what you're going to make it look like, and here's the products that you're responsible for. But the goal would have been, let's see the foundations of why we do what we do. And I'm sure you guys have seen the famous video of Simon Sinek with Start With Why, and he even wrote a book about it. And that was such a huge and compelling why. What is the compelling why for why we collaborate on this? And so really that shaped my leadership in a lot of ways, because I'm trying to ensure that I'm not giving directives as much as I'm offering ideas with teams and then trying to build the buy-in along the vision of those teams. And so that's just a people skill that I think you learn with time, but that you also then have to align with the work that you're doing. And the work that we were doing at that time at Millbrook was trying to build PLCs that were effective and ensuring that students were growing. And so, I don't know, do you want me to continue on this journey?
No.
This is a long monologue.
Oh, no, it's good. I think it's important to share with people what is apparent to me, or almost obvious to me, is how important it was that the powers that be, whether it's, administrators or whoever in your life, recognized not only your ability to work well with others, but also put you in charge of something that you believe in and that you are passionate about. Because I think a lot of times we can be in charge of things when we're just trying to get a foot in the door, trying to, get an opportunity to do something, and we might not believe in it or be passionate about it. We got to get through it. We just got to do it. And I think that, a lot of kudos go to, the people that were around you that recognized that this was specifically something that you could be successful in because they knew that you believed in working well with others. Because not everybody in our profession believes in that. Of course not. So, I think that that's an important thing. So as I hear you tell kind of your journey early on, that's one of the things that I just recognize so much just listening to you, because you were able to experience success because you were the right person for that job. And, I think that's a neat thing. But I'm also sure that comes with pressure now that you're the person in charge of finding that person for your school.
And I hope Dana believed that I was the right person. I hope she still does, however many years later, now that I've been in the district 15 and a half years. So we're halfway to retirement, man. How did we do that?
Man, it's awesome. It's a great thing.
But I hope that was, I don't know that she knew how that journey would go for me. But now, again, I'm in a different spot now. That job, that working with people and trying to support people and mold people, it didn't always go well. There were definitely challenges. And and anytime you work with adults, it's going to get messy. Let's be honest. I mean, we're in a profession now where people say, man, I don't know if I could work with kids. Well, let me tell you, the stress is not in working with the kids as much as it is in working with adults and trying to get adults to work together for a common goal, a common vision, and where we're headed. So that job at Millbrook and that work with again, my first attempt at trying to lead adults, even though I wasn't their principal or supervisor, that was hard. And any teacher leader, I hope that resonates with them, because to be technically on paper on the same plane, but yet having to lead those people is not easy. There's a status, there's some sort of labeling that we do in our minds about who someone is just based on their role or their title. And so it is in some ways easier to be the quote unquote principal, because some people are going to conform just because they think that title exists.
They're rule followers.
But imagine trying to lead people that are on the same plane as you. I was just a teacher on a teacher's salary that was doing my administrative internship, trying to build in collaborative practices that would lead to better outcomes for kids. And it just took a lot of training and patience, and relationship building is probably the hugest piece of that. We tell our kids, we talk about this as teachers all the time, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Well, that should echo with us as adults too, right?
Yeah.
Our staff together here, now that we've worked together at Stough for 3.5 years, I should hope that the bonds that we have on our leadership team and in our admin and in our office staff, those are much stronger because we've been through challenges together, and it's clear that we care about each other, not because we just happen to have a certain title and have our offices next to each other. It has to do with the journey that we're on and the work that we've done, and that we care about each other as people. And so I had to learn that as well. And then going from Millbrook for the first time, I ventured into my assistant principal job at Martin Middle School. I learned from multiple solid and really outstanding leaders. I think I gained a little piece of each of them, from Dana King at Millbrook and then to some of the principals that I got to work with at Martin. And I think my personality and leadership was shaped a bit. I think certain people as leaders bring out your leadership personality or your work personality differently.
Right.
And I think finally, towards the end of my time at Martin, I think I knew better who I was and who I could be as a principal. So to get the call to come to Stough as the one and only Chinese immersion school in our district was quite a unique and unexpected call. Again, I was a Spanish teacher. I spoke Spanish regularly in all of my jobs, from teacher to PLT coordinator, intern, assistant principal. So to go to the Chinese immersion school without being able to speak any Chinese was kind of an unexpected turn. But what was sold to me was this was a school that was in a good place, that had a fairly new magnet program, that we wanted to build the faith in the magnet program and in Mandarin immersion within the community and the school as a whole. And so that was one of my goals coming in. Little did I know that an immersion school is technically a school within a school. And that's a bit of a barrier because ultimately people believe that there's two different visions, or that there's two different goals, or there's two different communities, which is completely detrimental to what I believe an elementary school that serves its community should be. I believe that the school should be all of one, that we should be unified under the same vision. Yes, 200 or so of my students learn primarily in Chinese, and a little over 200 of my students learn primarily in English. But that doesn't mean that we still can't have programming, mission, vision, and values that align, and that we don't have ways that those students can all interact. It is an amazing program that we have students learning primarily in Chinese. These students are bilingual by the time they're 8, 9, 10 years old. That's amazing.
Amazing.
Those are the two most spoken languages in the world. That's amazing. However, the building of the community and the unity around that program and the unity among the cultures of the people that work for me has been very challenging, to make sure that people that work together, that have language barriers, that are communicating with parents differently, or communicating with community at large differently, that's been hard. And now it's kind of interesting to reflect about this. In the first 10 minutes that we've been talking, maybe it's been more, I'm not sure, I've now looked at this journey, and we've talked so much about building the capacity of people to collaborate. The Lord was preparing me for that, in the late 2000s at Millbrook, with the challenges that I faced and the things that I was expected to do. And now the journey takes me 10, 12 years later, and I'm looking at similar things with adults collaborating with parent community, magnet office, central office, the people that work specifically here at this building, all having to collaborate for a common goal. And so it's just ironic now just to bring that up. Just that's kind of a divine journey right there that I just have to I have to step back and give credit where it's due. So sorry, I've gone on a crazy long story here.
I want to share you with a lot of whoever's listening here, so that they can understand just how special some of the folks that walk through our halls and conversations can lead to. Let's go to Martin Middle for a second. So when you went to Martin Middle, were you immediately the principal in charge of instruction over there?
No, not at all. I was the 6th grade assistant principal, and then really just a grade level assistant principal for my 7 years there. I did 6th grade, I did 7th, and then my last few years I was the 8th grade assistant principal. An assistant principal in a secondary school, middle or high school, may be one of the most tiring jobs that you could have, I think, in the district. I mean, I think that the number of things that come across, the number of people that demand your time on any given time, the number of departments and committees and sports and things that you're responsible for, it feels endless. I felt like I was putting in more hours than the day had available. And I felt that honestly in my interning time at Millbrook too, just the assistant principal role. It resonated with me for a while, but honestly, so much of the assistant principal role sometimes felt reactive, that you were dealing with things and problems and issues and students sometimes that just came to you. And you were having to react and then try to clean up something or adjust something that had already really had most of its impact already happened. I felt like in the transition, I know I'm getting ahead of you a little bit, but the transition from assistant principal to principal was really rewarding in a sense that I could do a lot more things that felt proactive. I could do a lot more things that I felt set vision and cast vision and values, as opposed to really trying to just the day-to-day. There's a call here, can you take this? Yes. There's a situation over here in this hallway, can you take this? So that was really quite the challenge, was being responsible for a grade level of 350 kids. And for me, that meant their families, those teachers, that lunch duty every day. Have you ever had 350 11-year-olds in a cafeteria at the same time? No,
I've avoided that.
It's not the best experience, but it is something that happens at every middle school in our district. That those, generally speaking, I would say that 6th grade lunch is together, 7th grade lunch, 8th grade lunch. At least that's how it was in my experience, and I'm guessing many of our middle schools are the same. But to maintain some semblance of order and structure when you have a bunch of teenagers in the same room at the same time doing something as simple as eating lunch, you'd think it would be easy, but it is not. And just working with the number of personalities that you work with in that tedious age of the early teen years was quite interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed, let me say, after saying all that, I thoroughly enjoyed getting to know so many kids and families. And that's what it was about, getting to know kids and families and supporting them in some tedious times of life. I'm getting to that stage as a parent. You're on the precipice as well. It is not easy. And the things that, the pressures that our kids face in the 21st century, now that we have cell phones and we have easy access to information at all seconds of the day. The way we use social media, the way we train our children to use social media is a huge piece of the tail end of my time at Martin that we really had to do a better job of proactively teaching cyber safety, the appropriate ways to use a cell phone or to a tablet and whatnot. Those are things that are definitely prevalent and have to be prevalent even now. In elementary school, our counseling, our student services team does a great job, I think, of as early as 4th and 5th grade, starting to talk about some of these things that students can be capable of with devices. And so that is a theme of the last few years of just trying to navigate how to support kids. And I say kids, even though by the time they were in 8th grade, they felt like actually mellowed out young adults.
Right.
I really enjoyed them as 8th graders much more than I enjoyed some of the more unpredictable 7th grade, late 6th grade times. As 8th graders, you really start to see them being shaped into people that are going to be successful and have the potential to do amazing things. I don't know that you see that when you have an 11 or 12-year-old throwing something across the cafeteria or pushing and shoving at the lockers and whatnot. So not to say those things don't happen at multiple grade levels, but I think it is important just to note just the change over time that you can see in a kid. So at Martin, I feel like an assistant principal really does anything and everything with a little bit more focus on we have to react a lot more to the things that are already happening. And I think I just enjoyed much more going from that stage to the principal stage at Stough when I got here in 2016, where at first you step back, you see where the school is at, what's working, what's not. You get the perspectives of all your staff, of all your folks that volunteer or that are in the PTA. And then over time, you really begin to shape what you believe is best for that school based on what you've already learned and what you actually believe in your heart is what's good for them. And I think the combination of reactive to things that happen, no day is the same. You know this in public education. No hour is the same. Sometimes your schedule might look a certain way when you get there in the morning, and by the end of the day, it will not have happened at all in the way that you thought it would. And that's fine. But there's also a good balance of being with kids, being with families, and working with adults, in addition to just that being proactive to the things that you think are best for the school.
You, with your background in foreign language and being able to speak Spanish and teaching not a core class, how did that color your working with teachers as an administrator? Did you find that you had to, prove your chops as a teacher, or did you find that kind of endeared you to people because they respected another language? What was that like?
Yeah, that would definitely vary by circumstance, I guess, but I think there can be a divide at any given school about what we believe about core instruction versus specials or electives or whatever you'd like to call them. And I think that there are parameters placed on us by the state, by our district, that have different levels of focus on different courses. Obviously, the state has certain courses that are going to be state tests that are very summative in nature. I think that there's a clear nonverbal communication when we're giving bonuses to certain people and not others, or certain grade levels and not others. And so there is going to be a divide. There are going to be water cooler conversations, quote unquote, that happen with regard to who teaches foreign language. And, let's just take my example. Foreign language in the state of North Carolina, high school students still are firmly encouraged to take at least 2 years of a foreign language to access a state institution for a university experience. Of course, in my experience growing up, my parents said, no, you're going to take every single year foreign language and you're going to become bilingual, and et cetera, et cetera. But I get it. Not every family is preaching the same thing, and ultimately, what the state is preaching is if you want to go to a 4-year institution, you need to have 2 years of the same language. Is that still the case?
Yeah, it's still a thing. I mean, it's becoming more and more interesting what that language should be.
Sure.
and with, your Chinese immersion program, and, with the ever-changing population of America, it's like, where would you put a lot of those eggs in reality? If you step out and you think about it from a world perspective, actually everybody's putting a lot of investment in learning how to speak English.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's the role, what's the responsibility of Americans to be able to be bilingual or be able to communicate outside of that English language? So go ahead. I think about that, but I am totally intrigued with the perception of an instructional leader by people like me who are in these core subjects, that we have our way of thinking about ourselves, like you already referenced.
Sure.
And how conscious was that for you, and what did you do maybe to prepare to deal with any sort of core learning team or core instructor that you were working with, and how were you able to help them, knowing that you weren't a math teacher or an English teacher, and your final exam wasn't necessarily the one that showed up on a report card?
Sure. Yeah, as you were talking, Matt, I thought to myself, with each transition in my career, I was entering into something where I wasn't the expert. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important that that's not a secret, right? Like I'm walking into an elementary school in 2016, having never taught elementary school, never studied closely elementary curriculum, and now I'm walking into a situation where I am having to evaluate and have important conversations with staff members about their Standard 4, which says that they should be able to facilitate learning for students, or their Standard 3, which says that their teaching is aligned with the standard course of study. And so many of the digital resources, I highly recommend the NC Standards app on your phone. I'm in an observation, I go on the NC Standards app, I can just click on the grade level, the subject matter, and I'll know exactly what the standards say and what they are. And then so much of my work with the teachers, and this goes back to our time at Millbrook as well, is it's easier to start a good, solid conversation and to build trust with somebody if you're asking from an inquisitive stance as opposed to a declarative stance. And what I mean by that is, if I'm sitting here in a PLT with you and your geometry team, let's say, do you still teach geometry?
No, they've called that Math 2 now, but I've moved to something else. But it's okay.
Well, in the time that I was there, it was called geometry. And that's how old we are, I guess. Yes. I don't know. In the time, if I'm in the Math 2 team, and obviously I'm not able to teach Math 2 as well as you are, but I need to be able to have an inquisitive stance when I'm asking you about the things that we're doing, whether that's in a post-conference or whether we're actually in the PLT meeting and you guys are talking about graphing, and I'm like, well, okay, don't remember y equals mx plus b, but you can tell me if the students know, and you have the data to show, and I can support data analysis, and you need me to print you might remember the Blue Diamond reports, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I can print those Blue Diamond reports and analyze those with you. I might not be able to tell you exactly how to reteach y equals mx plus b, but that's me coming into that situation, giving you what I have and not telling you what to do. Same thing happens now. I mean, I am having to evaluate teachers that are speaking the 100% of their instruction in Mandarin Chinese. I do not speak Mandarin Chinese. So the post-conference is so key. Like that time of me being inquisitive about, okay, I can use my visual cues and tell that these students are learning about community helpers in kindergarten. They're trying to learn this vocabulary. They're trying to learn the purpose of what they are and what they do. But now I need to know, how does the teacher know that they got it, other than the cues that I have at my disposal? So in the post-conference, it's so key. I just have really inquisitive conversations, and we dive deep into what happened in that lesson and why, and were they encouraged by what they saw? Which students didn't get it? It goes back to the same 4 questions that we started with when Rick DeFore, rest in peace, Rick DeFore, started this whole concept of PLCs. What are they learning? How do you know that they learned it? What do we do if they got it? And what do we do if they didn't get it? It's the same 4 questions we've been saying the whole time. And you can have those same 4 questions in a PLT meeting with a bunch of staff. You can have that one-on-one with a post-conference. You can have that when you're doing MTSS and you're talking through interventions and you're talking about a specific child and what they're doing. It could be about behavior. It could be about math. It could be about about anything. And so, I freely admit, and I will freely admit it in front of the staff member, I freely admit that I'm not the expert when it comes to Math 2 or Mandarin Chinese, or when I got to Martin to sixth grade science. It was just, those are things that I learned about way back when, and now I'm going to brush back up on it because I'm going to see it. I'm going to be in your classroom. I'm going to be in your meetings. I'm going to see all of this earth science or physical science, or I'm going to see Mandarin Chinese. I might not be able to master it, but I'm going to get a good sense over time that I hope that I'll be able to have a better conversation with you, that I hope that I can offer more suggestions. But if I come in a little bit more humbly, I think that helps our relationship over time and gives that teacher a lot of boost of confidence too.
For sure. I mean, I think one of your huge strengths that I've always observed from you is you're a very good listener, and you never have seemed to shy away from it, meaning like, I've got some stuff to learn here, so tell me, teach me, tell me what's going on. And I wonder how you impart that wisdom. I know a lot of that might be a natural thing for you, but like, how do you impart that wisdom to administrators that you're now training and guiding? How do you help them in those? Because I got to think that observations have to be very nerve-wracking, especially early on in, when you're evaluated administrator and you're a new administrator, not evaluated administrator, sorry, teachers. How do you help your assistant principals understand about inquisitive conversations? How do you help them understand about the value of being willing to say things like, I'm not an expert in this. This is what I know. Tell me more, instead of just making all these inferences for all this. Well, that kid's not, he's on his phone, so you must not be a good teacher. Or you don't have all of your standards written on this corner of the board, so you must not be organized. How are you helping those folks?
Yeah, so we as leaders, I think in every school I've been at, especially with the new evaluation document, which isn't new any longer, when those 5 standards came out, and remember it used to be 6 standards and now it's back to 5 standards. When those 5 standards came out, it helped so much to have just collaborative discussions about what each of those standards meant and what we would then in turn look for. Wade Martin was my principal at Martin Middle School when that document came out, and he brought our admin team together and we chatted through what we thought each of those meant. And then over time, we kind of worked through what that looked like at Martin. And I feel like every time you get a new admin team member, whether it's now at Stough or maybe when I was at Martin, and I'm sure Dana King would do the same thing at Millbrook, you have to think through what those things mean and that the interpretations are somewhat aligned. Otherwise, my AP and I are going to have completely different conversations with our staff.
100%.
And that doesn't help our staff because then they feel like they're shooting for different targets. And the goal would be that we're shooting for the same targets. Having said that, the conversations within one-on-one post-conferences with a teacher, this made me think about it when you said something along the lines of, what if their standards are on the board in this room and not in this room? Or what if this person's doing this and this person has their phone out and so therefore that person isn't paying attention and so that kid's disengaged? What are you going to do about that? I think too, I can't overwhelm the teacher that I'm talking with. If there's 100 things that I want to work on in that classroom, I'm going to try to come up with one theme, one package. Because if I start hitting him or her with a ton of things, I really don't know that they can effectively enact all of my suggestions if I am going to make those. But if I could come up with one theme, maybe offer a little bit of reading material, maybe offer some ideas that I've seen work, or maybe somebody in the building that I feel like is a good model, I think those are good things that can help. That's definitely not the leading topic, but I do think that there are good enough relationships over time and enough of inquisition in the midst of the post-conference that you can get to a point where you can have a conversation about one theme that you really want to see changed. And you might not even say it like that. You might not say, hey, here's this one theme I came up with that you need to work on, because that won't go over right either. But over time in your conversation, my hope is that organically we see, oh, here's the common theme. We have a few students that are just not engaged. So what are we going to do? What are the things that work for Jimmy? What are the things that work for Cecilia? Let's talk about each of those situations, and then hopefully over time there's some thoughts or some bullet points in that teacher's head or even on a pad of paper that say, okay, with this student I'm going to do this, and I'm going to try this reward system, or I'm going to try and if that teacher leaves with a couple ideas, then that's been successful. And the more I can have those conversations, even post with my assistant principal, then I know we're aligned, that we do have that theme of we're going to help teachers in one area and not just bombard them with, I need you to change this. I don't know if that's the same at every school, but I just found, I think over time, I'm more comfortable. I think I'm just more comfortable building camaraderie in my school if I can have those types of level of feedback. And we can't do that well if me and my other leaders are not on the same page.
Right. I think that's so incredibly important. And when I hear you describing that, it's such an effective PLT way of doing it. It's saying, hey, if we're going to all grade the same quiz, let's make sure we grade it the same way. If we're all going to observe teachers, let's make sure we're looking for the same core values, the same signs, and we in our heads know if we see certain maybe negatives or areas that need improvement, we're all using some of the same interventions. And I think that really, the staff, I think this, they're amazingly aware of what you guys are, because they talk and they know, well, Cox told me that I did everything wonderful, but when I got observed by so-and-so, holy cow. Yeah. It's like, I wonder why I even have a job. And you hear those conversations, like you said, water cooler conversations, and people, that definitely kind of colors how they view their administration. So I think there's a lot of good things, and that definitely does not go unnoticed with your staff, I'm sure, because that's
the more we can presume positive intentions, gosh, that comes up all the time, doesn't it? In like any time you work with people, right? If the more you can presume positive intentions, the better. But I get it. People are messy. No two observations are the same. No two teachers are the same. Everybody's style is different. That's what makes this beautiful, is that you're working with people, and people are different. The adults are different. The kids are different. Every day is different. Like, you're not going to have that type of relationship with your profession in any other realm that I've figured out yet. The public school is such a beautiful mess in a way. I say that completely complimentary of the school system. It is a beautiful mess. There are challenges that we want to address. There's beauty in every child and in every person that you come across. And so how do we align so many beautiful messes walking in the doors that work here and that go to school here and that bring their families here? How do we align all that underneath one umbrella that says, we're your public school, you can trust us, we can work together? And I don't have it figured out, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to keep trying. That we're never going to have this perfect. There's no such thing as what I would say as a perfect school or a perfect classroom or a perfect observation. It's everything's a work in progress. It takes work, and it takes recognition for and perception of the fact that we can presume positive intentions, and we can have a perception that every child can and do well, and that every family sends us their best. So my hope is that is, if I'm emanating anything in this podcast, I hope that it's that we don't have it figured out, but that we believe in the vision and the mission that we had before us, and we're going to do what we can for our kids.
Well, I think that's 100%, what all of us hope to be the case, is that people, they want us to grow and they want us to get better. And I think helping people remember that is a really important thing. All right, let's zoom out a little bit. What's the next 5 years look like for you? What's the next 10 years look like for you?
I can't see myself leaving a school building anytime soon. I do not see myself wanting to work just with adults. I have so many great access points with students and their families in the school setting. I think that being in a school building is the future right now for me. I don't see it any other way. I love the principal position. I love elementary. I love the uniqueness of our school. The challenge of uniting us is still present. The challenge of changing buildings right now is present.
Oh, gosh.
I am in the midst of I'm in a swing space as we speak, and I'm going back to our brand new facility, which I'm excited about, and I think our families are as well. So I'm in exciting times at Stough. I have no plans to go anywhere. I do just enjoy our people. I think that I have just enough problems to continue to address so that I don't feel complacent in any way.
Right.
I don't see myself. I think there is this trajectory of people ending up in central office at some point. I do not want that for myself. I do not think that is a a place I want to be. And just in general, my wife doesn't like Cary, North Carolina. I do not want to work there. So I don't think that we'll be going to Cary or doing anything like that. I'm really happy at Stough. I'm really happy with our vision and the leadership that we have here, that kind of surround me and support our cause. And so yeah, the 5-year to 10-year thing is a little bit daunting right now, and I'm happy where I'm at.
Yeah, well, it's an exciting place to sit as a former colleague of yours teaching, and to see how you've gotten to this place that you are. And it's exciting that there are principals like you in our system, and that these kids and these teachers get to be exposed to your positive energy and your belief in each of these individual people. And I think that's a really special thing. Let me ask you just a couple more questions about how are we going to replenish our administrative ranks? How are we going to keep teachers like you who are really good fits for administration? How do we convince you guys to keep making those transitions into administration when we're having a hard time keeping teachers in the profession period right now? So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say, and this is just a quick aside about hiring, I never received more resumes for a posted position than I did when I posted the assistant principal position at my school.
Okay.
I had well over 200 resumes for that one spot, which was a bit surprising, but also kind of enlightening. And I think that my concern is more about replenishing quality candidates that want to teach, that want to be in the classroom and then remain in the classroom because they feel like that is their calling and they feel like they can make an impact right there. I have those people in my building and I'm excited to have them. I want to keep them for as long as possible. I think that that's the thing that is the hardest, is to just know that when you post a position, specifically in hard to staff areas, special programs comes to mind. It is hard to find quality, motivated candidates for special programs and special programs positions. I have a great special programs team right now at my school. I hired a first-year teacher out of her university in the summer, and she's phenomenal, and she's a finalist for the Diane Kent Parker First-Year Teacher Award. And that feels like hard to come by. It's also especially hard to find quality teaching aides and assistants that the monetary compensation just is not there for our aides, for our bus drivers, for our contract cab drivers. Those are the ones that I feel like have some of the hardest and most underappreciated roles in our system. And those are the ones that I'm concerned about. Specific back to teachers, one of the things that I know is an important belief of our system is that our teaching staff reflects the demographics of the students that we have. And that's also been a talking point that we've had here on our campus, how to find a teaching staff that demographically reflects the beautiful depiction of our demographic smorgasbord, our melting pot, if you will, at Stough. So that's another topic that I know is going to come up in our upcoming principals meetings. I think that I heard that the Division of Principals and Assistant Principals had that as a topic today in their monthly meeting. And I know that's something that our people at HR are working through, some of our other institutions throughout the Southeast and really across the nation, to try to recruit people of color to be in this profession. And so that's been hard, because I think as a principal, you do try to interview people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all races, and all ages even. In some of the interviews I've done this year, we had quite the plethora of different people from different paths that we interviewed. And so the goal would be obviously to find the best fit. And how do you rectify that with also trying to ensure that your students get to see someone that looks like them as well? So it is a challenge. There's not one solution. It's a group effort, I think, from state leaders, district leaders, and ourselves as leaders in the buildings. to try to make sure that, one, we find the right people, and then we sustain them. Because when a teacher leaves, whether they're pursuing a career outside of education or they want to work at central office or go into a different role, that hurts our kids, because no matter what, you're going to transition someone new into your building, no matter how many years of experience, no matter what their walk was. Every transition takes time to adjust and to build in kind of the vision and the core values of that school.
Right.
So though I'd like to say our core values are completely aligned with the district, there's 192 schools in this district,
Right.
and all of them have different really approaches and feels to them. You've been in many different schools. I'm sure they all feel different to some degree. And so to bring somebody in is not easy, to bring somebody in brand new. But you've brought up a challenging question that has no clear answer, but I think it's definitely something that's on our minds and really in our hiring practices, things that we have to think about.
Is there anything you'd like to see the state do or give you the power to be able to do? Is there any sort of, like, I know it's not going to be a silver bullet, but like, is there something that if you had the ability to do this, or if the state would just offer this, what are maybe some of those things?
Yeah, I think some of it is an ongoing political debate about how we best make competitive salaries with our state employees. And I know that's ongoing, and I know that has ramifications through taxes and through everything.
For sure.
So it's going to be an ongoing political debate. I do not wish to be in that debate. I'm really comfortable being the principal and not having to make some of those hard decisions, and just kind of staying in my lane. I do think that there has been progress. I don't think it's been enough progress that we could say that we're competing with the rest of the nation. And I think that debate's going to keep going for a long time, Matt. I don't know how that's going to end quickly. I think that that's one thing that is going to continue to be a debate in our legislature about how best to compensate teachers. And then even if we do compensate them, how do we make sure that we have the leadership at the district level that can then support those teachers and sustain them to want to continue in that career and feel that they're supported. And then while we're on the topic of the state, I'd be remiss if we just didn't note the fact that there are massive inequities county to county in our system. I believe there's 114 school systems supported by the state, and the inequities from those that have a huge tax base and those that don't is massive. And, you know, we've learned about that in grad programs, and you can read about the Leandro case on the news, which has been going on for years. I think that that's a huge impediment to a lot of our state from having students that are competitive, coming from graduating from some of our more rural districts with lower tax bases, or lower income bases. I think that's a huge inequity that many of our political leaders just have to think about. That we have to think about, how do we support these smaller districts to still be able to graduate competitive 18-year-olds that can then compete at the same level and get to the same institutions. It's just highly inequitable, and there's not an easy solution, but it's something that needs to continue to be at the forefront of the conversation.
For sure. I think we're super fortunate to be in Wake County, where we are, surrounded by education and a lot of industry, and a lot of people want to come to our area. And we benefit a lot from that. I mean, we see it in our schools, we see it in our families that are part of our communities, and the support that many of them do, and they really wrap their arms around our schools. But you're right. I mean, I think it's very easy to look on a map of our state and go, well, these kids are probably doing okay around Charlotte, or these kids are doing okay around Raleigh, but what about these kids around Salisbury? What about these kids in Buncombe County?
Sure.
And I think that that's an important thing to continue to try to be aware of, be conscious of, and do our best to kind of spread the word that those teachers are in the classrooms trying to believe in all those beautiful messes as well, and how where they are is a big part of our state's personality, and that matters.
It does.
And
well said.
That's super important. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time, for your insight, for sharing your journey with us. I think it's important for lowly teachers like me to hear the people in charge.
Don't say that like that, man. I was trying to impress upon you that you matter too, my man. So
well.
It's not lowly. It is a togetherness piece that I think we have to breed into every school community, that this is a together entity. This is a together endeavor. And so, yeah, I'll leave you with that. Sorry.
Well, no, that's well said. And I want everybody to continue to buy into that and believe in that and know that when we take care of each other, we're taking care of ourselves and we're making everything better. And I think that mindset is what's going to keep public schools specifically as strong as they are right now and getting better. And I think that these employees here at Stough with you are sure that you're very concerned about taking care of them and how that is going to make you better at your job, knowing that they're good at and comfortable at what they're doing.
That's my hope, man. Thanks for sharing.
No problem. Thank you very much.